It's nice when things work out. I've been saving this episode for a couple of months. I was waiting for the Grammys on Sunday night before I shared this. I was waiting for Saje, the vocal group made up of singers Sara Gazarek, Amanda Taylor, Johnaye Kendrick, and Erin Bentlage, to win their Grammy for their arrangement of In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. They recorded it with one of the most admired musical minds today, Jacob Collier. And like much of what has happened with Saje so far, that recording was both unintended and totally right. Somewhere between the reward for the hard work of talented artists and magic. Of course, I didn't know if they would win, but on the other hand, I had a pretty good sense that they would. Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran.
When the sun is high.
And the Grammy goes to In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning.
In the afternoon sky.
We'd like to thank all of you.
You can always find something to do.
We'd like to thank the Academy.
But from dusk till dawn.
We are Saje. We are all female creators.
As the clock ticks on.
We arrange and release and produce all of our own music. So we hope that this feels like a win for all female identifying creators, independent musicians. We are the gatekeepers of this. We also want to thank our dear friend Jacob for collaborating with us on this. He contributed so much heart and depth and space and musical soul.
In the wee small hours of the morning, while the whole wide world still asleep.
The story plays like a dream. One day, Jacob Collier stopped by the LA recording studio where Saje was working on their debut album. He was friendly with some of them, and so he casually dropped in. One thing led to another, and he ended up playing and singing a few free-form takes of In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. There's footage of it online, and you can see him improvising his arrangement. You can also see his childlike enthusiasm, his playful energy, his request to do just one more take.
Okay, here goes another experiment.
And then another.
I've got one more.
Each one more brilliant than the last.
Can I do one more? Okay, sorry for too many options, but this is really, really fun.
After Jacob left, the singers and Saje built their vocal arrangement around what he had played. It's a beautiful marriage of improvisation and arrangement, and the result ends up sounding completely inevitable. They contextualized Collier's spontaneous approach. They brought it fully into their world. They built a frame around his impressionistic gestures, and then they filled in the landscape. But this was not their first experience with serendipity.
I bet when you see the ocean.
Before Saje was Saje, back when it was just an idea floated by Sara Gazarek to put some kind of vocal group together, the four women gathered in Palm Springs for a weekend to get to know each other and discuss the possibility of doing something. They came out of that weekend with a song called Desert Song, a sound, and the makings of a story.
You're drawn to the strength inside the waves. But if you get caught within the ocean, the undertow will let you lose your way.
The members of Saje don't live in the same place. Sara and Erin live in Los Angeles, Johnaye and Amanda live in Seattle. But they started to work as a group, and eventually they recorded Desert Song. Without a full record, without a label, without much of a team in place, they submitted the song to the Grammys. It was their first song, remember, and it was nominated in 2020. Of course it was nominated. It's so beautifully haunting, so sophisticated, so evocative, rooted and cascading, hip and emotive. Their sound seemed to emerge out of the desert. It seemed to blow across the arid Coachella Valley. It was just there for them, and it pointed to so much possibility. And it raises some interesting questions, like how is it possible that four people who were more or less randomly assembled came out with such a unified sound so quickly? Was this luck? Was this intuition? Was it good production in the multiple senses of the word? Was there something inherently balanced, aligned, destined about these four people and their chemistry? They would have to wait to find out because COVID came and did what COVID did. But eventually, Sage released their debut album in 2023. It featured guest appearances by Ambrose Akinmusire, Michael Mayo, Terry Lynn Carrington, and of course Jacob Collier, among others. But at the core of the album was the signature silky Sage sound, which is a little hard to define, but very easy to identify when you hear it. It's technically challenging to execute, suspended chords and interweaving lines, and it's very satisfying to experience. They ascend, as they say, beyond their training and into artistry. I started hearing the name Sage on the tongues of my friends and colleagues, but I did not listen until one day their music found me, blowing in under my Brooklyn door, and it was just there for me, as natural as water or wind. And that's when I dove in deep. Fortunately, they are thoroughly modern in their approach to content making, and there are plenty of videos and clips online to satisfy the Sage curious. Often in their videos, they dress in monochrome outfits, each in a different earth tone or sometimes in the same color, a deep green or beige. It's an interesting sleight of hand, polyphonic voices in monochromatic clothes. But it actually seems to support their all for one, one for all philosophy. They are 4 unique voices coming from 4 unique places, but they are all equally important to make the project work, and they're unified. We got together late last year in Gowanus, Brooklyn at a photo studio where they were spending the afternoon making holiday videos. I arrived dressed in monochromatic gray, hoping to become an honorary member for the evening. And we had a beautiful talk about their formation, their journey, from that first weekend retreat in Palm Springs to the release of their first full-length album and its subsequent Grammy nomination for Best Arrangement, Instruments and Vocals with Jacob Collier for In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning. We talked about collective lyric writing, managing logistics and juggling 4 schedules, the emotional space that feminine energy allows, and discovering who they are in public. Accepting their Grammy this week, they seemed excited and delighted to be on stage picking up the award. But a part of me suspects that even they were not so shocked to be receiving it, because at this point, there's something that is simply charmed about the Sage experience. Third-story.com will take you to the archive. It's hundreds of past episodes, including conversations with some of Sage's friends and collaborators like Michael Mayo, Pete Min, Janice Siegel, Jacob Collier, and many more. We're made in collaboration with WBGO Studios. Visit wbgo.org/studios to find out more about all their award-winning content. And I joined Substack recently. Visit leosidran.substack.com, which is new for me. That's where you can sign up for the mailing list now, and you can also choose to be a paying subscriber. I'll be honest with you, there's almost no difference between paying for it and not paying for it. So you do you. But if you want to support me, that's a way. If you're a Patreon patron, I will continue to send you the episodes and the occasional bit of bonus content, but I suspect that the whole thing will be moving to Substack this year. Here's me and Sara Gazarek, Amanda Taylor, Johnaye Kendrick, and Erin Bentlage, Sage, talking it down and breaking through. I want to start out by sharing how I came to be sitting across from you, because I think in some ways it speaks to maybe something that is familiar in the experience that you're having also. People told me about Sage for 6 months, a year, I don't know how long, and I did not pay attention. I did not listen. My trusted friends told me, you've got to listen to this, is incredible, and I didn't. My friend Randy Ingram did a gig with you. He's like, you got to listen to this. I didn't do it. And then I think the algorithm finally fed me something. And I freaked out. I mean, I was like, I have got to talk to them. And this is kind of like, as somebody who does a podcast, this is my kind of worst fear. I checked my emails, wrote Sage into my emails, and saw that I was pitched on this 6 months ago. And I passed on it. But I have come to find that things happen in their time, and they come to you when they need to come to you. And we receive things when we need to receive them. And I guess the reason I wanted to say that is because I feel that the same is kind of true for this group. Like everything about the creation of the group, the way you first got together, when you wrote your first song, that it led to a Grammy nomination, the incredible enthusiasm that the project was met with, the interruption that then came because of COVID, now again, the sort of serendipity of this track that you did with Jacob Collier that has led to another nomination. It just all seems like it's happening in its own time and in its own way. And I guess I'm just wondering, catching you in the midst of this now sort of proper presentation of the group, what you're feeling. That's kind of where I want to start. Johnaye.
Yeah, you can't force things. I mean, you can, but I think that experience has taught the four of us that when you try to force things to happen, it's never what you want. And so I think that we've just kind of gotten into this space where we just do what we do and continue to step forward. But how are we feeling right now? It's just really wild. Everything is still requiring processing. I mean, I'm still processing the fact that we were in the studio with Jacob and he just was so generous and gave so much and left so much room for us to explore. I'm still processing that. I'm still processing, being in the studio and being produced by Erin and Amanda and recording double tracks of, 15 songs. We're still processing a lot of stuff. It's all good. Like, it's all just really great. And I think that we're really grateful that we stumbled into one another's lives, because I don't think it was something that any of us were thinking about attempting to manifest. And I'm big into manifestation, but this was just one of those things where it's like, let's hang out and see what happens. And a lot of things just fell into place, and there wasn't, like a forcing of concepts or ideas. Even Desert Song, like writing that piece together, it was just kind of like, hi, nice to meet you. Who are you? What do you do? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? There was just like a lot of openness and room and allowing things to come to be rather than forcing them. And I think that's kind of the way that we operate best, is by just allowing things to come to us, and like the things that are for you will find you.
Sara, as I understand it, on some level, you had put it out into the universe that you were looking to assemble a group or put a group together.
It was not something that I thought about before the words came out of my mouth. So it's kind of like what Johnaye is speaking to, that like there are moments in your life where you allow yourself to be a conduit for something to come out of you, right? And there was a situation where I was collaborating with Amanda, and for all intents and purposes, never thought of myself as someone who wanted to be in an ensemble, didn't think of that as something that aligned with my artistry or where I was headed or my trajectory. And yeah, I mean, I think if I had been stubborn about things, I would have said, this isn't what you do. Don't go there, but I followed my heart and walked up to her after this kind of collaborative evening and was like, and kind of was joking, but like, shot my shot. And if she rejected me, I would laugh. And if she said yes, I would smile and hug her. But she, beamed her brilliant, gorgeous smile. And we were kind of off to the races, and we pulled from, this tight-knit community, the vocal world, vocal jazz world, vocal jazz composer, arranger, who care about contemporary music and share the same values with contemporary solo jazz musicians. It's a really small community. So we knew of each other, respected each other, had collaborated in different circles. And really, similarly, like I posted something on Facebook that was like, why don't Airbnbs allow for you to select that you need a piano? And someone Facebook messaged me and was like, I'd be happy to lend you my Airbnb if you want to create music sometime. And we were in talks about Sage at that time. And so I threw it out that like, hey, if you guys want to fly yourselves down to Southern California, I have this place for a week. And we thought about kind of forcing things and how we wanted to have an agenda, and like each person was going to give a master class on the thing that they care about each day. To the others. Yeah. And like share a listening presentation, and we were going to arrange, and we were going to circle sing. And it ended up being that we just listened to music and talked and cooked and drank and ate and swam, and really laid the foundation for us to be able to go into our corners in the middle of the pandemic and still feel safe enough to create together. I think if we had focused on the kind of like technical side of things, or just kind of like how to achieve the skills that we set out to achieve that weekend, it would have just been like another scholastic experience. Yes. But we really we left that space feeling really tied together. I think all of us coined this phrase that we don't use very often, but sage rage. Do you guys remember that? Oh, yeah. Where we were like angry. We were angry that we weren't in the same space anymore. Like we were grumpy at our partners. And
So, but the writing of Desert Song was it not before COVID?
that was during that retreat. Yeah.
The
So that was in the
original
desert.
retreat,
It was in Palm Springs. And there was just like this parallel between sort of like the perceived vapidness of these dry mountains, but realizing that anything that can survive there has to be really resilient.
You didn't know what you were looking for necessarily until you heard yourself say it, but you said it to Amanda. So I guess we need to move over here now to what you remember experiencing when Sara said that.
There's so much to unpack there for me personally, just because I had already been looking up to Sara for so long, never even pictured myself like making music in the same space as her, even for one night only, let alone a long-term collaboration. So it was a thrill. I mean, I was knocked off my feet when the words came out of her mouth. I had been not necessarily wanting to be a part of like a treble singing group, but I had been looking to start something like educational or like a younger group for trebles available with Erin. So that kind of made sense at the time because Erin had just sung backgrounds on Sara's record. And so
written, arranged, and sung backgrounds. Yes.
Excuse me. Written, arranged, and sang.
Many seeds being planted.
So the idea of collaborating both with Sara and Erin was just a thrill. And when we were kind of brainstorming, did we want 4 people? Did we want 5? Did we want to look for another person? In came Johnaye because of Sara's long-term connection with her. And little did I know that I was about to meet one of my favorite people on the planet.
Are you both in Seattle now?
Yes.
But hadn't encountered one another?
Not really.
Oh, I mean, I had seen Amanda on stage with Groove for Thought. And actually, you performed at Gin.
Right.
And you don't remember this, but I came up to you after and was just like, what are you? Who and what and where and why and how are you?
I almost remember that.
Almost.
I almost do.
You were walking off stage and I was like, ma'am. And I snatched you up. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And here we are. Yeah.
But in a sense, maybe you weren't looking for a treble group because you work in a lot of already ensembles and arrangement jobs and educational things. So it wasn't a change for you. It wasn't something outside of your regular world.
And I had just come out of singing in a different vocal jazz ensemble for like 9 years. And so I was honestly kind of feeling like, I think I'm ready for a break from singing in a vocal group until Sara came up and asked me. And then I was like, oh no, I'm wrong. I'm ready. Here we go.
And it was your suggestion then to bring Erin into the mix?
I mean, she just came up naturally as we were talking about it and excitedly brainstorming that evening. Erin's name came up immediately.
This is all on the same evening?
I'm pretty sure. I don't think we'd considered a 4th until, I don't know, a few weeks later or something.
There were endless possibilities at that point. There was no like, it's going to be 4 women and who will it be? It was like, do you want to do something?
That's a question. Like there does, and I want to get to this, but there does seem to be something specifically special about the group in part because it is 4 women. Was that a prerequisite or was it open-ended? It could be mixed, could be all kinds of things.
Even that weekend when we were in Palm Springs, we threw out a couple names that I won't mention because I don't want people to have FOMO.
Yeah.
I know. We emailed some people. Someone said no. Another person, we just didn't. It was like we had the weekend and then when we left, we were like, there's not, like, it doesn't make, it would be too much to penetrate at this point. Like the sort of like team had been forged and the relationships had been forged and there was too much that had happened at that point that someone else would have to infiltrate, and we knew that the energy would shift, and it was like, yes, maybe the music would shift because we would have a 5th voice, and sometimes that can add a level of complexity or kind of a spread that we might benefit from, but it was like we didn't want to welcome that into the experience because the dynamic was so special at that point. It really did feel in that weekend like a sisterhood.
Yeah, it was like day one, we were like, who could it be? Who could it be? Who? Maybe, how about this person? How about this person? And then by the end of it, it was like, no, ain't nobody else coming up in here. It's a wrap.
Well, I think that's what's kind of so incredible when you read that this was put together. I think most people experience this sort of silky blend that turned out to be really special. And you would think maybe it was something where it was like, I went around the world looking for the three people that would mix, and it wasn't that. It just sort of seems like it happened. Do you think it had to be the four of you for that to happen?
Our sound is definitely because of the four of us, yes. It's like we had a conversation even that first week in Palm Springs about each of us carving out just a quarter of our voice to offer this unison sound to then have the whole sound that is sage. But also just as people, like I don't think we would have made it this far if any one of us wasn't a part of this. Like we all just bring something incredibly necessary, both like in terms of skill, but then also just in terms of like balancing energies, or like some people are really good at going hard in this way, and then this person is good at balancing that. And, so it's like, yeah, I just can't fathom anybody else being a part of it and getting what we've got so far.
My daughter's 12. When she was little, she had this book about bonobos, which are like a
primate,
but a matriarchal, or the females are the dominant. And it was a story about the bonobo females who ultimately kicked all the males out of the jungle or whatever it was, and how peaceful they lived and how constructive they were. And meanwhile, it would cut to the male bonobos who were like a mess, And this is a record that you all kind of produced, and each song is credited. Sometimes the arrangements are led by two of you, or the lyrics are but in general, there's like a real strong message that penetrates, throughout, which is, we did this. This is all of us. And even in just the way, like, you made a song, submitted it, was nominated for a Grammy. There's so many things about it that just feel like, I wonder what would have happened if there were more men involved in this, and if it would have gone as smoothly, or if the energy would have been different.
Just before our love got lost.
Last summer, we were invited to sing at an event put on by the Berkeley Jazz and Gender Justice Institute.
He said, I am as constant as a northern star.
They were honoring Joni Mitchell with a doctorate.
And I said, constantly in the darkness.
And we got to sing an arrangement of A Case of You.
Where's that? Where's that? Where's that? Where's that?
And Joni Mitchell spoke at some point.
If you want me, I'll be in the bar.
And she was saying that if women had been more involved with harmony from the beginning, or whatever the beginning is, but in jazz, kind of, there would be a lot more sus chords.
On the back of a cartoon coaster, in a blue TV screen light, I drew a map of Canada. Oh, Canada.
In a sus chord, you can live in both the happy and the sad. There's space for everything.
With your face sketched on it twice.
We just about died because I think we avoid like fully voiced dominant chords, like our life depends on it.
Oh, you're in my blood like holy wine. It tastes so bitter, it tastes so sweet.
We're constantly like moving out of the way of these kind of like sometimes ironic feeling voicings, and finding other ways to like not, I wouldn't even say like soften, but just like open them up.
I could drink a case of you.
And like we get questions all the time, like, what's your favorite voicing? What's the sage voicing? And we share what it is, add 4, whatever you want to call it. But she like nailed it.
And I would still be on my feet. I'd still be on my feet.
And she was kind of the one that was like, if women had more seats at the table from the beginning of this music, we would have had these other sounds sooner. But we all arrived there also, and just in our time together as 4 women creating.
Do you think that that's an emotional commentary, or is it a range commentary, or both? I mean, it's easier to live maybe a little bit higher in the range with those pinches. They're a little rubbier, lower.
I mean, I think it was emotional because range-wise, you know, if you have a 6-part group where, you know, 4 treble voices and 2 like lower voices, you can still get that rub. You just have the lower voices holding down like the, you know, the root third 7, and then you have the rubs up top.
Right.
So it's really, you don't need necessary, and like also a lot of male voices can sing super high. They can get that if they want. I think it's really the emotional thing of not needing to like punch it in the face.
Yes.
Not to say that all men want to do that. There's certainly plenty that are very gentle and, you know, can be open in that way. But I really think it's like the emotional space that a more feminine energy allows is just obvious to us.
I would also add that I feel like all of the members of this group have really tried to ascend beyond training and into artistry. And that I think is something that is really thrilling to hear in chamber music and not often something that's incorporated. That like a lot of times people can be bogged down sort of by the theory and the math of it and the complexity of the composition and the arrangement and have that be sort of the be all end all, that it's like hip and crazy and weird. And I think that I haven't often felt that in this group, that I don't hear the theory or the meter or the harmony, that I just feel the expression. And it's not that it isn't there. It's some of the most complex, like most challenging music I've ever sung. And we've all sung some really, really challenging music before. But I think it's the sort of combination of this intense level of technical and theoretical and musical and compositional and orchestral training, but the willingness to get out of the way and allow something else to step forward in service of like humanity and art.
Yes.
And that's something that I'm really grateful to be witness of and to be able to participate in. To me, it doesn't feel like feminine or masculine. It just feels like a choice that some artists don't feel compelled to make. And I think it's less common in chamber music.
I really felt that as well. I felt like in listening to you, it's possible to be hip as you want, and also accessible and emotional. And if you want to go down the road and find out what is the sage voicing, it's there for you. But there's a lot of emotion in it also. Each of you came into the group with your own career already in motion, and each of those careers looked a little different. So what was it like for you individually to make the shift into becoming sage? Johnaye.
I came up in the vocal jazz world. So my introduction to singing was honestly singing in my high school vocal jazz ensemble. And then I went to college for jazz studies. And so I started at the Chicago College of Performing Arts and was in ensembles there. And I remember hearing this 16-piece, which ridiculous. Why? Like 16-piece vocal jazz ensemble from Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo. And I was so blown away that I left the college that I was at to go study at Western Michigan University. When I say that I was in a vocal jazz ensemble, I mean, we were singing the most ridiculous, like 6, 7, 8 part, what? And it's all like crunchy, and we were doing choreography. I remember being at the show going, what is happening right now? But they sounded so good. And I was like, I want to figure out what this is. So I was up there kickball changing with the rest of them. And I studied under Steve Zagree, who was a really wonderful vocal jazz ensemble director. And that was my training. I mean, I was taking private voice instruction and learning about developing my sound, but also like when instrumentalists go to institutions and they have to play in the big band, you had to sing in the vocal jazz ensemble. And so that was what I was doing for several years. And when Sara asked Amanda and Erin about, hey, what about this? I think somewhere in my mind, I was like, I really miss that. Like, I love my solo stuff and I love the groups that I've been working with. Hide your heart from sight, lock your dreams at night. It could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Someone drops a sigh and down you tumble. But I don't know. There's just something about the community and there's just something about it that I was really longing for because it is such a special and unique experience that you can talk about it, but unless you've experienced it, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. But once you're like in there, it's something that your heart can long for, even as you're having a very successful career as a solo artist and just loving what you're doing. It's possible to be like, oh, I miss harmonizing with other voices. Like that felt really good. Cause that's one of the first things you learn as a kid, you know, is like, how do you sing along with your sibling and how do you like tune this up? And I mean, I guess maybe if you live in music nerd types of houses like we created. But yeah, it was something that I came up doing and definitely was called back to.
So it was
sure.
a return.
Oh,
it was
totally.
a return to something. What about you, Sara?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of young people these days come to this genre through a pre-collegiate music education. And I was fortunate to go to a high school in the Pacific Northwest that had the same director for their nationally acclaimed jazz orchestra that also led the vocal jazz ensemble, which at the time I didn't know was kind of an anomaly to have like an actual jazz instrumentalist leading this jazz choir. You know, he would transcribe these like really challenging big band arrangements and then write really corny lyrics to them. And then we would, you know, write lyrics to Miles Davis solos. And there was no conversation about unified endings, no conversation about unison blend and like vowel shapes. That he wasn't a choral instructor. He was a jazz musician. And so it was thrilling and exciting. And I had the opportunity to go around the US and like meet Ray Brown and Diana Krall. And like, you know, we went to all these jazz festivals. We were interfacing with jazz musicians. And that was why and when I fell in love with this genre and realized I wanted to dedicate my life to it.
Never, never will I marry. Never, never will I wed. Born to wander solitary. Wide my world, narrow my bed. Never, never, never will I.
When I went to USC, the choir director was a choral instructor. And that was a really big disconnect for me, you know, that there was no conversation about context or the music or the why. It was just sort of the blend of sound. And that was the point when I kind of fell out of love with that part of it because I thought that there wasn't a way to unify the two and that there wasn't really a value beyond just kind of technical skill in kind of like trying to find a way to express what you're doing through multiphonic singing together, right? Yeah. And then I was put in a position where I had to teach a jazz choir, and then I learned how much I didn't know and was able to understand the context and the why and the what and the importance of all of those things and the kind of figure out how to transcend what is on the page into something else. And that was a really important lesson. And I think that was pretty important for me. I think if I had come to my interaction with Amanda without that foundation, I would have been really blown away by what she did, but I wouldn't have understood it and responded to it in the same way if I hadn't had the ability to kind of find my own voice as a soloist and then learn how really beautiful and complex and complicated and expressive this art form can be when you have someone who's imaginative and creative behind the pen. But yeah, I had never done it in a professional setting. And it's still, sometimes I'm like, am I doing this in a professional setting? Am I? I know y'all are, but I'm just trying.
What about you, Erin? I've heard some of your other solo projects, the record that you made with Amber Navran from Moonchild, for example. And I would say that they lean very contemporary, kind of lo-fi, hip-hop adjacent, more modern production and sound. And I discovered that you also have been singing with Pomplamoose because Jack Conte, another thing I completely slept on, has been freaking out about you for years now. Yeah. So how was this group experience different?
I come from Vermont. I grew up in a public school that didn't really have a jazz program. I don't think we had a jazz program at all. I had a really good choir director, and I did a lot of festivals, like auditioned for festivals, and that was incredibly inspiring to me. I also grew up dancing ballet quite seriously, and I was dancing to a lot of like Tchaikovsky and Chopin and a lot of romantic, super expressive, harmonically expressive music. And then like simultaneously when I was in high school, that choir director tapped me and a friend of mine to start all treble a cappella group. So we just started like transcribing. Like I would literally listen to like guitar and piano parts and just like figure out what the 3 notes were that they were playing in those triads and tell like the soprano 2, alto 1, alto 2 to sing them and then teach those parts. So that's kind of like where I started. It wasn't, but I was listening to jazz as well. I was also though listening to like Regina Spektor, Alicia Keys, Norah Jones, Ella Fitzgerald, like some like a mix. And my sound, it wasn't just like, I wasn't just getting like jazz. I was getting a lot of raw stuff as well. And anytime that somebody would try to make my sound do the right thing, I felt really resistant to it and wanted to quit. Like I took a couple voice lessons in high school, wanted to quit because I just didn't like sounding like not myself. And so then I got a degree in arranging from Berkeley, and that was really cool. And then I also was being paid on the side to do like arranging for groups, but I wasn't in those groups. So I was like being myself, kind of being like a jazz adjacent singer over here, but knowing that I don't sound like what people are expecting if they want to hear like an Ella Fitzgerald tribute, whatever. And then over here I was writing. So Sage was all of a sudden this opportunity to like kind of write in a way that like I could use how I really sound and feel, but then also dig into like there's so much that you can't express as a solo singer in the moment. You cannot possibly show the audience how it's not just like this one thing that you're feeling. It's also everything underneath and how it moves like ahead and pulls behind. Like there's so much that you can show people if you're not just in charge of like the main thing, but also everything around it. And so Sage was like this opportunity to be like, we're all here to be raw. We're all here to actually like tear our heart out and put it on the table. And like let it say something. And so I think as much as I had whatever chops I had before Sage, I think it was like in Sage that I really started to feel like as an arranger, I felt powerful. Like I think emotionally powerful as an arranger because I had never had the opportunity to be so unaffected by what I thought I was supposed to be doing as a singer or an arranger. We do a lot of things. We always sound like ourselves, but it's so special that we really want it to be real. We don't need it to be, I don't know. We don't need anything to be prescribed. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I love that answer. I don't know what the question was. I love the answer though.
Yeah.
What is the process of arranging and learning the arrangements? When the arrangements are made, are you assigning the voicings to individual singers? Are you thinking about the individual singers when you're voicing the chords?
I love that question. I think at first it was like the answer was no, because it was like we know our voice parts pretty much. It's like usually Amanda on the top and then Erin, Johnaye, Sara. Though that can change. Depends on who's writing. Yeah. But as time goes on, we know more and more and more like what is really successful. And also like there's a moment where I'm just like, I know I want Sara to just like belt the hell out of this. Right. So Sarah's going to get this even though it's like the top or the second from the top.
Jolene, please don't take him.
You know, or like I really want to hear Johnaye's like angular approach. Like she has like really like clean but soulful approach to like complex melodies. Right. Like I need that there.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life.
Like I need Amanda to like carry this in like a way that like I wish I could, but I could never. So I think we're getting there, and it's like now becoming much more vital. But at first it was a lot of like, let's try this, and like secretly suffering sometimes a little bit, and then finally after a year being like, hey Amanda, like I know you wrote this for me, but do you want to switch parts? And we still do that. Yes. Yeah.
And you've been feeling the same way. Yes, finally.
Absolutely.
I will say that it's in the last couple of arrangements that have been sent out, that it's really thrilling to sing something and realize that like that one bar was written for my voice. Because you can feel it. Like, you know, like, oh, this person, yeah, they heard me. Okay, I'll let it rip now.
Your question was also about like how the arrangements come to be and how we learn them.
Yes.
And so what's interesting, the back end of that is like listening to a demo that was created in the beginning of Sage versus listening to a demo that is created now. Like now I hear Amanda singing Johnaye singing this part versus Amanda singing this part in the demo. So the way that the parts come together, I think it would be better for y'all to like discuss how the arrangements come together, but the demo is where all of the magic lies.
Every tune is a little bit different, but I think lately we've been really good about kind of setting an arrangement intention together before any one of us kind of splits off and takes responsibility for fully realizing the arrangement. So we'll kind of create a texture map of sorts or just brainstorm ideas together, put it all in a doc to reference as we go through the arrangement process. And then one or two of us will typically take on the actual charting of the arrangement, the actual demo part, and we will send out practice tracks for everybody to learn their parts. But I think as the actual arranging is happening, I feel like we kind of go through phases, but lately it's been really just kind of recording based. Like we'll set up a template for an arrangement and then get in there and track a couple different ideas for a background part for a section, or go through and just improvise a melody for the backgrounds and then orchestrate from there. Maybe it's a harmonized moment. Maybe it's like I really hear Johnaye's voice poking through and I want to feature that, or I want to have a cascading waterfall moment where everybody has a moment to shine, and just kind of trying to be mindful of what the music needs and also what we need to be able to feel like we're able to be authentic to our own voices and also contribute to the larger Sage sound.
I understand that there's not like a very hard division of labor, but would you say Amanda and Erin are more involved in the arrangements?
Yeah, I think our backgrounds lend us to be the ones who are like doing the nitty gritty,
like orchestration of it,
demo. Yeah.
And usually what'll happen is they'll like fully flesh out this 4-part thing and then upload individual stems, and then we will download the kind of like stack of those into our own DAW systems and then learn our own part. And then the submission of like whether or not we've learned them varies from song to song, but typically because we don't live in the same city, what we'll do is like learn them on our own. There's a deadline for understanding like when you're supposed to have the arrangement learned. And then sometimes we'll go through the process of like, we'll record ourselves singing that stem and send it for feedback, or line everything up and see where sort of the discrepancies lie.
Yeah. This speaks to another question that I had, because when I heard the recordings, the blend is so incredible that my assumption was these records had to be made with 4 people standing in a row or in a circle singing at the same time. And it is so not that way. I mean, there's all this performance of you that proves and shows that it can sound like that, and it does sound like that. But I was even surprised to see that when it came time to make the record, that you went back to the desert, you rented another Airbnb, I don't know if it's the same place or where you went, but you hung the blankets on the walls, and you double-tracked everything individually, which was surprising to me because it doesn't read that way on the record. I guess that's a sign that it worked. I understand for record-making purposes why you do that, but I mean, it is an interesting thing for a vocal group to have spent so much time overdubbing one at a time.
I don't think we'd do it again that way.
I think we're reconsidering the next project.
Yeah, we have a different idea for how we'd go about it. It just took so long. I mean, I think what ended up, the reason why it went faster than you might imagine is that everything was kind of in place before we did that. So there was the demo that was recorded in someone's personal office with like a kind of MIDI draft of what they wanted the instrumentals to do. And then they took our re-record of the demo, removed the like fake band in a box sound, the rhythm section recorded to that, and then we re-recorded those vocals. So it wasn't like we were starting from scratch. Right. Most of the songs we'd performed live. We were able to rehearse a lot of the stuff together, but I think trying to do 15 songs all at once was where the mental health crisis of the hive mind really came into play.
But I think that also the reason partially why that happened and felt like it needed to happen was because of the writing process. Like the recording of the demo is like such a huge part of our writing process. Like, I don't know how y'all feel, but I used to just like arrange in finale. Like I'd be like, yeah, I know what this is going to sound like. Like, boom, boom. But with Sage, it's like I need to record it and like imagine how it's going to sound, and like every little detail needs to like just do whatever. So then it made sense like to double track stuff, and you know, I feel like that set the precedent for.
Totally. And the other side of it is when we started, I was like, I don't like to listen to recordings to learn my part. I learned to read music for a reason. Right. I can read. I've worked this hard to be able to read. I'm not going to, I want it to be my voice. Ciao. There is so much information in them demos that is not something you can put on paper and make it make sense. Oh my gosh. At this point, I'm like, what we need charts for?
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, at some point, you know, you talk about transcending technique. It's like at a certain point, you may have to transcend your education also. We don't need to write it down.
Right. I mean, I'm very visual, so I process very well by like writing the chart out afterward. But it's probably not necessary, honestly.
For what it's worth, I think that the pre-band recording probably would remain the same. That like the arrangement of things kind of has to happen in the way that we had been doing it. But I think we have 5 more songs to record. We're going to do all of them in a 2-week period, and then we're going to send all of them for mix, and then we're going to listen through all of them and send. Like I think we've figured out a way to streamline things in a way that's like a better spread of our skills and our interests. Now that we know that we can trust each other, we have a foundation of like, this person is really great at that and cares about that. I can let them be that.
I think that's part of what's so exciting to me about watching your development as a group, because your audience is getting to know you as you're getting to know yourself. There hasn't really been an incubation period. As you are developing and putting work out into the world, we're learning what you sound like and what the edges of your potential are in the same way that you are. And there are some really interesting implications of that. For example, the first song that you ever wrote, called Desert Song, which was long before you put out a record, has a recording. As a matter of fact, that recording is the one that was nominated for a Grammy. Then you re-recorded it on your record, on your new full-length album. So there are 2 kind of definitive versions of Desert Song.
Someday we'll reach the desert, held by the warmth within the skies. Breathe in the exhale of the desert and see yourself reflected in her eyes.
Johnaye, you brought your song Never You Mind, which you had already recorded on a previous solo album, into the band.
Though they'll tell you they control you, never you mind.
On the Sage album, you recorded a medley mashup arrangement of Michael Kiwanuka's Solid Ground and the Beatles' Blackbird.
Would you help me? I don't understand. Is it over? Am I losing solid ground? Solid ground. Blackbird fly. Losing solid ground.
And Sara, I know that on one of your earlier solo records, you played with combining Blackbird and the standard Bye Bye Blackbird.
Into the light of a dark black night, packing up my care and woe, here I go, singing low.
So this is another example of a musical idea that came into the group from your solo career. And to a larger extent, it's an example of how the general creative process is being shared publicly, that you kind of leave little crumbs behind you in the path of your own discovery, and we can pick them up.
Well, I do think that's the permission that I guess the society has for artists these days, because there is such a window into the human behind the art, especially in the jazz community, right? Like, I think years ago there was this sort of like gatekeeper aspect with record labels where there were these sort of anointed ones that, everyone was so curious about what the inside of their life was. But now it's like, Beyonce making a pie in her living room, and I think that the permission to be a human is new. And I think that it would have been really challenging. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible without the advent of social media and sort of the way that the culture has moved like 15 years ago, to be able to say like, here's a demo that we all tracked that actually sounds like pretty good, because people didn't have the skills and they also didn't have the tools. But now that people do, there is sort of like this willingness to accept imperfect content in a way that I think is like more indicative of humanity. I don't know. It's a bit of a gift of sort of like the social media era that we live in, to be able to have permission to step into like, we don't know who we are. We are discovering what this group is, while understanding that like, if it really is art, it's going to continue to change anyway. So why not step into not knowing?
And do it in public.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to speak also because over and over you've kind of talked about the emotional nuance of the way these arrangements work, the living in the in-between space of having complex emotional feelings when you hear the music. But there's another aspect of it, which is that you had to write lyrics. And I mean, anybody who's ever written a song knows how private and intimate that is to do. And then to meet new people and to not really know each other and then have to decide what we have to say and share yourself, your inner truth with these people. What has that process of the composition been like?
I think it depends on the song, but I will say that like the way that the strengths distribute, maybe I shouldn't say strengths, but because I think everyone likes to write lyrics, but I think Sara has a real knack, and Johnaye actually, because you tend to, I would say that, I don't know, actually. I don't know. Everyone's
like
brought lyrics in. Everyone has brought lyrics in for sure, but I think when in doubt, I think Sarah's really good at being like, I will take this and I will develop this. And usually it'll be like a conversation around what is this song about, even if there aren't words yet. It'll be like, what does it feel like? Maybe there's like a one line that we all agree belongs in the song, but like what's the context? What are the nuances behind that line? And then someone will kind of take it and develop it out into a big ol', masterpiece of sorts.
I mean, at the beginning, like when I look back at the songs on this record, I think we totally wrote Desert Song together. It was 100% melody, lyrics, chords together in the same room.
Same pool,
exactly.
Thank you.
Same margarita pitcher. And then there was another song that we kind of co-wrote. Amanda had written like 2/3 of a song, and then the rest of us wrote a bridge. And then there was another song, our first attempt at like Zoom writing, which was just brutal. But it was the song that Michael Mayo was featured on called You Are the Oracle. And that was sort of a response to all of us just feeling really lost in the pandemic and not knowing like where to turn for answers and stability. And that one, it was like we were still in sort of our like, let's all write together. And Johnaye and I volunteered to kind of write these lyrics together. And I was like, great, we'll talk on Zoom in 3 days. And then I was like, I'm so sorry, I wrote them in advance. And Johnaye was like, oh, all right, okay. It was indicative of the beginning, the seeds of feeling comfortable, just like letting something come. I didn't intend to like bogart the lyric writing experience. I sat down and like 40 minutes later had finished the song, and it just like poured out of me. And I felt entirely attached to letting them all go and said that to Johnaye. But Johnaye was like, well, you had something to say, so let's just let it go.
Careful the winding road you're taking, or the more you roam. So far from home, longing to soothe the ground and it's shaking, or the more you try.
But there was a period where, I would write something and anticipate that there would be like a revolt against what I had come up with, or like, a long list of notes of like things that people wanted to change. Like I remember when I wrote the lyrics to Britches, I can't remember what happened, but I just I felt really nervous that there was going to be like a very big change. or like, because it's just like, it was just like out of the blue, you know, like we hadn't talked about much other than sort of the perspective. Yeah. And I finished them and was like, oh, here we go. I don't know. And everybody's like, great. Here.
Dreaming in a way that was only built for seeming that a day would come and you would stand beaming, open arms in a way that I would still see the gleam in your eyes, disguised in a lie, open mind till I...
Have there been lyrical or harmonic or arrangement disagreements? Have there been musical disagreements?
Not really.
Well, I wouldn't call them disagreements. I would call it like
there have been more interpretative
interpretations.
Like once the arrangement is done, for sure, there's like, I think we should or shouldn't do this dynamic or vibrato here, or like, I'm not flat, you're flat, you know, whatever. But
but there have also moments where it's like there's like an arrangement. Like I remember there was this I Am Late.
Yeah.
So there's a song called I Am Late
thing, right? It was like, how are we gonna? What words are we gonna linger on, or like, where's the space or whatever?
But it doesn't sound like it's aesthetic on a global level, a disagreement about what our sound is.
Not at all. No, and it's not like a I don't trust your vision thing. It's like whose vision is stronger.
Right.
And it's not even whose vision is better, it's whose vision is stronger.
Yeah.
Because there's no wrong or right in this group. And I think that's the thing that we've all learned is that like both are going to be really valid and both are going to feel really good.
Right.
But I think at this point, most of us feel like if someone has a strong vision for something or a strong desire for something, that we all know that we want what's best and we understand what's best for the group and that we just want to see it through. So like when we were writing our most recent songwriting session, I was like, here's my idea. And everybody spent like 5 hours fleshing out this idea. And finally,
it wasn't just your idea, to be fair.
Well, it kind of started that way. And then we tried to justify it.
We really tried.
We tried.
Collectively.
And then finally I was like, well, it's been 5 hours and it still feels bad. So who wants to move on?
No, I think I was like, guys, is this a bad song?
Oh my God.
And that wasn't your fault. I feel like I was saying like what I have contributed is bad. I don't know what to do. Yeah. I'm bad.
But I think there's like a willingness to surrender.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's not like an agenda necessarily, but I think that there's. Are you cold?
It's cold in here.
Yeah, there's no.
Yeah. You see all the layers that we have on.
For those that don't have a vision for where we are, we're in a giant loft in Brooklyn, and there's no heat.
The heat is ragingly loud.
It's so loud.
So it's been off for an hour.
This is where, by the way, I came monochrome for you.
Oh my God, neutral too, so that you would slide right in.
I was thinking if we're orange and green and red, then gray will fit with everything, and I was ready.
We should have gone branded. We didn't go branded.
Because we were meeting in a photography studio. I was ready to drop in.
Yeah.
We should take a picture of you on the Lips couch with Sage before we say goodbye for the press purposes. Yeah. We need it.
This was born out of a whim, basically, but it is working. And at a certain point, you start to set goals or have plans or hopes or ambitions. Where are you in that process right now? I mean, what do you hope for now? Maybe if you hoped that it would just be nice or be a fun experience or something originally, you've outgrown that. So what are the hopes now?
Why are you pointing at me?
Sarah's forcing the microphone into Johnaye's hand.
Our hopes. Okay, well, I'm going to be honest. I'm just hoping for balance, honestly. I think we love this so much, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work. And when we came out the gate, it was just like we were building the plane while we were trying to fly it. Yeah. And put a lot of energy and blood and sweat and tears into it. And, you know, I remember when I was in grad school, we had some business classes, and one of my professors said, the management, like the team comes when you don't need the team anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You know? And I just remember thinking that is crazy. And so I think we spent our early stages really just trying to figure out not only like what we sounded like, but how we functioned and what our roles were and how to, you know, how to exist as a group in two different places and how to continue to develop material and grow and create and, you know, continue to develop our love, our relationship with one another. And so now it's like, okay, we're trying to release some of that like heavy lifting that we've been doing, which is another struggle. It's like, okay, so these are the spreadsheet people in Sage right now. Who are the new spreadsheet people going to be? Are they going to make the spreadsheets the way we want them to make the spreadsheets? Are they going to reply to the emails the way that we want them to? And it's like, you know, handing over the reins so that we can focus on the art even more, and also like our stuff. Yeah. You know, it would be really great if we were all independently wealthy or living off of residuals and could just like hang and make music. I mean, that's what I'm manifesting right now. Come on, Powerball.
I love that you're not even saying, come on, music business. You know it's not music business. It's Powerball. That's the only way.
No, I'm going to help my friends make so many records. Like, I'm going to just, like, make it rain. I'm buying everybody houses. And, like, we just aren't going to have to worry about things. And we'll just be able to create art. And so, it's like, it would just be really great. Like, we have jobs. We're professors. Like, we're teaching little boos how to play piano. Like, we have jobs, and we also want to write and arrange things for our private projects, and then we want to do the Sage thing, and then we want to work with other folks. And it's like, all I want for Christmas is balance. It takes time to like explore and identify what that really looks like for 4 very different people with 4 very different lives.
Is it stressful? I mean, I have often asked people how they recover from or deal with success, because, you know, all of your lives were sort of set up for however they were set up before this happened. This is an interruption in a funny way that you have to accommodate. The fact that it's working, the fact that you're out on the road right now, the fact that you're having to slot 4 different individual careers into this project is challenging and stressful as much as it is a best case scenario for what might have happened. Is it stressful?
I mean, I'll say I'm stressed as hell because I have 8-year-old twins that are like, just like, hey, we're going to go on tour. Okay, 2 weeks of childcare. Yeah. Like drop off and pick up. Like, my husband works for the federal government. He has a job that like he has to do. And just like the idea of like, or like even we got to get a dog sitter. Like, who's going to walk the dog when I'm out of town? Like there, these kinds of things. It's like, you think, oh my gosh, we're going to be on the road and it's going to be so great and it's going to be so fun. But it's like, logistics are real. Yes. And I mean, I'm not stressed now, but like when I was like, when you're in the process of trying to figure out how you're going to make it all work, that's when it's just like, I love this so much. I love this so much. I love this so much. Who is going to take my children to school on Tuesday, November 15th? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that is stressful. But as you're figuring out all of the stuff, like, I just keep thinking, little infants in a big backyard. The music and the love. Holding up against the wind. Like being in the same space. Painted white to cover up its flaws. With these, you know, beautiful humans. Keeps the sun from getting. It's like, okay, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this. Plant a seed to see what grows. 'Cause beauty comes from things I know. From the middle I fall, I try my best. So let it move, to let it rest.
I mean, I think one thing that's easy to forget too, something that I've been thinking about in the past couple of months, and also especially as we're talking right now with this question, is like, you know, we came together at this point almost 5 years ago. 2019 is 5 years ago in 2024. And it was 2018 that we really started talking. So we've grown a lot. Like, I've grown so much as an adult person in the last 5 years. And so I think it's really easy to assume that when a group comes together that it's like, who they were at the beginning was exactly who they were going to be, and what they wanted at the beginning was exactly what they were going to want for the like entirety of that group. And so I think it's been really important for each of us as we shift and as Sage grows. Like, I didn't dare dream about a Grammy nomination. I'm from Vermont. Like, I didn't dare. So it's like things have been exploded in a way that I didn't anticipate. Vermont just feels so small. I know it sounds ridiculous to say.
Wait, isn't it? Anais Mitchell's from Vermont.
Anais Mitchell is from Vermont. She's like my shining, you know, she's Ben and Jerry, you know, but like all that to say, like there were so many things that I wasn't even like hoping for myself because I wasn't secure enough to hope for that. And now it's changed. And so I think in the past year, especially, like so many, I mean, things just keep happening in our lives. And so I think we are all having to constantly be like, hey, can we schedule some time to just talk as humans with like hearts that have feelings and just try to get to the bottom of what everybody wants starting now. And then like 6 months later, starting now. Because it is like you just have to, at a certain point in life when you have so much happening that you love, you have to choose what do you love the most. And it's really painful.
Right. And so like you're about to go out with Jacob Collier, and that's going to be in a pretty extensive tour, I assume.
Yeah.
So that's your 8-year-old twins.
Yeah. Well, I also have a dog who's basically, you know. No, but yeah. No, yeah. Like I think I wouldn't have done that maybe 2 years ago. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I would have. I probably wouldn't have dared hope for it, you know. But I think we've had to kind of come to terms in the last year that like we still all have a craving to be individuals. So how can we serve ourselves as individuals and also show up for the group as we've said that we were going to? And if it doesn't happen, how can we adjust? And how can we hold space for each other to be human, but also like hold each other to what we need from each other? And, you know, now we're getting into therapy, you know, group therapy.
No, but I do think
vibes.
that must be a huge part of it.
It's huge, yeah.
And again, this isn't, you're not all at the same stage in your life. And you also didn't develop this thing as, you know, students or whatever, and then your lives sort of took off, and you know, you're having to figure out how you do this as it becomes successful. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I will say that there is something that happens when you make art in a void for 4 years with like a vision for what you think it's going to be, and like awareness of and a development of like true supreme intimacy in the way that Sage has carved space. Like all of us have admitted that there's not another relationship like this in our lives other than our bewedded partner, right? Like it's like the things that we talk about and the openness that we share. But there's like this fifth member now that is like our album out in the world. You know, there's like this being that has now been shared that like we're not in control of. We don't know where Sage is headed because it's at this point, like the statement that we've made is now not in our hands anymore. This art is now being consumed and being dictated by people that like we don't know and that aren't necessarily a member of this intimate foursome, but are intimately interacting with this art. You know, and so to say like what is next for Sage, like I think we have this kind of like dictated vision for like what we think is going to happen based on the path that we've been on and our own individual thoughts and what we need and the balance that we're looking for. And we can't shy away from this fifth member that is now also a part of like the intimate connection that we have, you know, like I think that it's like, I don't know, my brain isn't making words in the way that I wanted to, but like ultimately I just feel like art isn't yours once you let it out into the world. And that becomes part of the conversation of where things are headed once you sort of give this offering and people are taking it into their hearts.
Right. And it's going to lead you to other things that you can't predict. I mean, I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Things will shift in a way that like, I think we won't be able to anticipate.
But I think that's kind of what I was referring to at the beginning of the conversation when I said things come to you in their time.
Right.
Because all of what's come to you has not been the result of some intentional thing. I mean, you made the work, but you didn't have any intention of it being received the way it was received, which is true for all of us. But I mean, I think is especially true in this project for some reason. Johnaye, you know, you talk about who's going to do the spreadsheet and, you know, are they going to do it the way we want to? And when you say it's been 5 years, I mean, 5 years is a long time for a project, so you deserve to have spreadsheet people and team people or whatever. But it does seem fast. I'm sure you all know plenty of people that have been out here for much longer or have been those people for much longer out here who never had the team and never had people that were doing that. That's what most independent artists wait for and crave. I wish I had my team. I wish I had my spreadsheet person so I didn't have to do it.
Right. I think it's, that's an important thing to acknowledge that like it is easy to not see the forest through the trees when you're in your own experience. But like Sage has been on this really beautiful trajectory that has opened up some incredible doors with like a certain sense of momentum that like is not easy to create. You know, what we've been able to achieve is like, it's important to take a moment and like inhale a bit.
Yes. At the same time, I mean, I remember now reading the liner notes on the record, the press release or whatever, where there is a press release that says that your record is coming out in 2021.
Ha 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 ha. That's right.
Just as a reminder, even to me, that like it seems very fast because it's out and it's nominated and it's this and it's that. But I mean, you know, it's 2 years of you thinking this record is going to come out.
Yeah.
And
well, note to self: a solo record can be released in 6 months, but an album with 4 double tracks, pan, right, left, plus special guests.
Guests at the wazoo.
Guests at the wazoo, 15
Rearrangements.
arrangements, editing the stems, and then balancing the stems, and then mixing the stems with 4 people in the room with 4 different opinions who live in different states with different things happening in their lives. It was definitely a lot of heart and time we learned.
Yeah.
Well, Sara, Amanda, Johnaye, Erin.
Nice order.
Sage, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me and for making this beautiful music.
Thank you,
I'm such a
Leo.
fan.
Thank you.
Thank
for having
you.
us.
There they were, my friends. Sage. I love those ladies. I'll be back in your headspace again before you know it with another deep dive.
Looking in my mirror.
Until then, I'll talk to you soon.
Took me by surprise. I can't help but see you running off and through my mind.
This has been a WBGO Studios production. To learn more about WBGO Studios' award-winning podcasts, special concerts, live streams, and more, visit wbgo.org/studios.